Hey friends, welcome back. Thank you for joining me again tonight. Before we start, if you like this type of content, liking and subscribing really help keep this going. Also, drop in the comments what other game or series you'd like to listen to in the future. I tend to listen to these myself, quite often. Tonight, we stay topside and walk among the shaped ones, the hollow, the fell, and the other lives the Shroud rewrites, where they come from, what they want, and how to guide them without turning every road into a battlefield. Think of this as a field guide you can carry in your head after a long day. Where to look first, what to listen for, what not to do, and how to bring people home. Start with one simple frame that keeps everything clear. Creatures changed by the Shroud aren't villains in the costume sense. They are habits that got a body. If you treat them as habits, you'll use the right tools: rhythm, distance, wind, and time. Torches and shouting have their place, but the steady work saves more lives. The hollow are the most painful to meet, so we'll start with them. Picture a person whose body is still standing while their inner sense of direction has been set down somewhere else. They drift toward warmth, toward voices, toward any place that feels like a room already in use. They almost never initiate harm. Trouble happens when someone tries to trap them or frighten them into turning back. You can recognize a hollow by their attention. It isn't aimless. It's anchored on the nearest sign of life. Clothes hang normally, skin tone looks a touch too even, and they blink a little less than they should. In quiet air, they come closer. In moving air, they hesitate. That tells you your first tool: wind. If a hollow follows you, do not lead it into your home. Cross open ground where the breeze runs straight. Walk with a steady, audible breath and talk to a companion in plain, calm sentences. The hollow will slow where the wind disagrees with the fog's preference. When it slows, you make the clean turn, 15 paces crosswind, then forward again. 2 turns like that is usually enough to let it attach to the open place instead of to you. Things that help with hollow, in order of usefulness: a handbell rung once, not in a pattern, a door you close with a real hinge sound, warm light that moves away from your front step and toward the windward side of a square. Things that do not help: bright grid lamps that hum too smoothly, banging on metal in long rolls, or standing still to argue with it. Remember, hollow aren't debating. They are following heat and the memory of a room. You offer a better room, the night air. If you must speak to one, keep your voice ordinary. The mind inside is not present enough to understand commands, but it will relax if your voice sounds like work, not like performance. The fell are the Shroud's hard answers to stress. Where hollow drift, fell commit. They move with purpose, but the purpose is borrowed from the tune they were trained to keep. That's why fell often ignore you until your motion matches a rhythm they recognize. 3 steps and a pause, a steady hammering, a looped patrol pace. Break a pattern and you step out of their interest. Maintain it and you are aligned to be corrected. You'll know fell by their stance: efficient, spare, and by joints that bend a fraction too far without pain. Skin can look pulled smooth. Muscles sit in lines of convenience rather than strength. Sight isn't their strongest sense. Rhythm is. That's your leverage. You don't outmuscle fell, you out-time them. A clean tactic that anyone can learn goes like this: approach with a pace that does not repeat. 2 short steps, 1 longer, then stillness. If they track you, pivot in place without stepping and give them a single noise that doesn't loop, like a pot dropped once. Their attention will hitch. Use that hitch to move across a draft. In a draft, fell adjust slower because the hum they prefer scatters. If you must strike, strike to break pattern. Knees, feet, the tool hand, then leave. Do not stay to dominate a space you cannot maintain. The point is to pass through, not to claim. There is a middle category people call Shroudspawn for lack of a better word. Animals and constructs that the fog uses as carriers for a while. They act like themselves with one rule turned up too high. A hound that always circles clockwise, a stag that freezes at the same distance every time, a scrap construct that repeats its sweep without noticing you unless you settle into its path. These are solved by interruption, not by force. Throw a cloth through the hound's circle, it will break stride to investigate and lose the loop. Step 3 paces too close to the stag and then back 4. The mismatch resets its threshold and it flickers out of the stuck rule. For the construct, wedge a stick under the arm on the offbeat and let it reseat. It sounds silly until you see it work and realize you've stolen the fog's favorite trick, changing the routine by a hair. Origins matter because they tell you what can be undone. Hollow begin when the shroud learns a person's daily route and replaces the route with a feeling of gentle pressure. The person stops making choices and starts allowing choices to be made for them. Fell begin when Elixir and Shroud meet in a body that won't stop, often a worker or a guard who has pushed past the point where rest would reset things. Shroudspawn begin when a living thing or a device gets locked into a rule the fog can predict. Undoing those starts with returning a person, an animal, or a mechanism to something unpredicted that is still safe. That's why wind and argument and small honest noises matter so much. They aren't random. They're human. Let's make this practical with street scenes you can picture and reuse. First, the alley behind a bakery at dusk. A hollow drifts toward the warm door. Inside, people are tired and the air is still. Do not slam the door. Do not shout. Step out. Close the door with a sound you can repeat later and walk past the hollow toward the open lane, talking to a friend about ordinary things. A moment later, ring the handbell once. The hollow will follow the warm sound and the moving air. Make a gentle turn into the square where a pylon has just been tuned by hand and a kettle is simmering in the clinic. Leave the hollow there, where wind crosses from 2 sides, and go home by a different street. The bakery door stays a door, not a net. Second, the market during setup. 2 fell cross the far edge, drawn to the regular thump of tent posts being set. Shift the rhythm. Ask the crew to pause for a count of 5 after each third post. While they do, walk the fell across the draft that always runs between the fountain and the north gate. If they persist, break the pattern again. Switch to mallets on cloth for 10 strokes so the sound dulls, then switch back. Fell hate inconsistent inputs. They prefer you give them a loop they can solve. Refuse the loop, and they lose interest faster than you'd expect because the fog spends itself trying to predict you and gets nothing back. Third, a road cut along a slope with trees on the lee side. Shroudspawn constructs sweep the ditch with a clean arc, clearing leaves that no longer fall because the fog is holding them in place. Don't challenge the arm where it's strongest. Step into the rhythm between arcs and wedge a stick under the bracket on the return instead of on the cast. The arm will stall in confusion long enough for you to pull the pin and set it to manual. If you re-enable it later, give it a new cadence, a stutter at the end of the arc, so the fog can't sit in the old rule and take it again. Ethics matter here, and they aren't complicated. You do not hunt hollow, you guide them, you do not exhaust yourself proving a point to fell. You pass safely and let them spend their energy on a pattern you refused to keep. You do not break Shroudspawn for sport. You reset them and move on. People who ignore these ethics make neighborhoods worse even if their fights are loud and impressive. The measure is simple. Did the street keep its shape after you left? If yes, good work. If no, try fewer heroics and more habits next time. Now, some sounds to memorize because sound travels better than instructions when you're tired. A good door, hinge oiled but still honest, says, "We live here." A grid pylon tuned by hand returns footsteps with a little texture. Tuned too smooth, it swallows them. A market starting right has 3 noises in the first minute. Rope pulled through the bell ring, crates set down on wood not stone, and a kettle lid trilling. A clinic working well at night has the simmer, the pen scratch, and the low talk. When any of those vanish all at once, you don't need a chart to know the fog is courting the room. Put one back, then another. You can teach children to help without scaring them. Give them call and response patterns, 5 claps answered with 3, so they can test a lane for normal echo. Teach them that the apple with a bruise is safer than the perfect one that never changes. Teach them to wave a cloth at ankle height in a circle that interrupts a dog's over-tight loop. Teach them that counting names out loud at dusk ties people to the place in a way the fog can't quietly undo. Children love jobs that matter. These matter. Field kit for townsfolk, not specialists, looks like this. Handbell, not a big one. A small bottle of hinge oil, chalk, a scrap of cloth with a corner tied as a handle, a list of 3 names to call if a hollow follows you home. The clinic, the bell ringer, the neighbour whose window always catches the wind. A sentence to use when you're scared that doesn't make more fear. I'm going to the square now. You can come as far as the wind. Say it like weather, not like a spell. Stories help the skills stick, so here are 3. In the brickmaker's quarter, a hollow would come each evening and stand by the kiln house door. The first week, workers shouted and slammed and carried tools past it like weapons. The second week, the foreman changed the brake. He moved it to the windward side and left the door on the lee cracked just enough to speak. He walked the hollow to the corner, touched the pylon, rang the bell, and told it he was going back to work. After 3 nights of the same, the hollow left at the bell and stood by the corner instead. The kiln house rested. On a military road, a pair of fell began interrupting repairs by locking onto the hammer rhythm. A sergeant, older than the rest, told the crew to hum a tune they didn't all know, each at their own speed, each under their breath. The hammers lost sync, the fell lost interest, and the road gained a clear hour. That became the crew's habit. Hum anything, but never together. It sounds ridiculous until you see it work, and then it becomes the easiest rule to keep. At a ford, Shroudspawn took the shape of fish that always paused in the same eddy. It made children think the water was a friendly place to stand. A grandmother solved it by hanging 3 spoon bells from a willow branch so that any current strong enough to play with kids would ring them. The fish still paused, but the bells made the rule obvious. Children learned to step only where the bells said the water was awake. When you do have to fight, keep it short and aimed at the rule. For hollow, there is almost never a reason. For fell, step off the loop and break the piece that holds the pattern. Ankle, wrist, the tool they repeat with. Then, go. For Shroudspawn constructs, jam the cadence and disable the drive. Leave signs that say what you did so the next person doesn't rearm the loop by mistake. Never fight to look brave in the quiet. The fog likes brave looks. It turns them into mirrors. There's a question people always ask near the fire. Can hollow return fully? Yes, sometimes, and the method matches everything else we've said. Wind, routine, names, get them into moving air. Keep a simmer within earshot. Call their name, and the names tied to their name at proper hours. Do not talk about what they were. Talk about a task they did every day. Sweeping a threshold, checking a line, tying a knot, and place the object in their hand. If they take it and do the task, praise the task, not the person. The person is listening from far away and will return to the work before they return to the story. If they don't take it, you try again tomorrow. The tomorrow part is the medicine. For fell, the better question is, can they be prevented? The answer is ordinary. Rest crews on time, refuse the extra vial that keeps a shift perfect, but steals recovery, vary routes and cadences. The people most at risk are the ones who save the day every day. Make it so they don't have to. Give them the boring shift on purpose once a week so their pattern loosens. It feels like mercy, because it is. Before we close, a small checklist you can stick by your door and teach your neighbours. Does the door speak a little when it closes? Does the room have one honest sound at night? Does your route home cross a draft? Do you know who rings the bell on your block and when? Do you have a sentence ready for a hollow that does not invite it in? Do you have a way to break a rhythm if a fell starts to track you? Cloth? Kettle lid? A new step? If you answered no to any, fix one thing tomorrow. Just one. You'll be surprised how quickly the street starts to feel like itself again. The shaped ones aren't a separate world. They are our own habits reflected back at us by the fog. Hollow remind us what happens when warmth and company run without choice. Fell remind us what happens when work outruns rest. Shroudspawn remind us what happens when rules forget people. The Flameborn's gift isn't a sword. It's the patience to teach a neighborhood the opposite of those 3. Warmth with choice. Work with rest. rules with people. Learn that by heart, and most nights will end the way nights should, with doors that tell the truth, with names answered at dusk, with kettles cooling after the last bell, and with roads that carry you home without asking for anything you can't give. Next time, we can walk the survivor's map, ridge corridors, caravan codes, and how small towns stitched seasons together into something stronger than borders. But for tonight, count your steps to the bedroom. Let the hinge say a soft yes. And let the quiet be the kind that rests, not the kind that erases.